I want to jump in real quick to our quick fire questions. We ask folks to send in questions to our guest every week, specifically for Claire this week. We had several come in. Actually, Carl from Santa Fe has the same question that I have. He specifically says 538 has become my oracle. Is that bad? What do you tell people like me? How do you warn them about spending too much time on the 538 website?
Yeah. Well, for health reasons, I think people should get more vitamin D. It's like I struggle with how to communicate this to people because, we want those clicks. But no, I think, listen, I don't think a lot of stuff is going to change in the next week. We're recording this on a Tuesday. Like, I'm not anticipating any craziness happening. So why torture yourself, And
Keep clicking, but not with stress. Take a Xanax and click.
But also, I think it's some of it's. I realize that right now it's a lot of anxiety from people who just want to see this election over with. Like, I think Democrat or Republican, a lot of Americans are just sick of this stuff, right? They want to get the election over with, and so I think don't. You can use us as your sort of mathematical predictors. But again, I also think that people should visualize what it would look like for their candidate not to win, because as we, that is a possibility, and that your mind should also be prepared for that eventuality. So
you said something last week on your podcast, I think, which was brilliant when people were asking about 538's role in this. And I think you said something to the effect of, if you're looking for reassurance that Joe Biden will win, then listen to Pod Save America.
And I got in trouble for that on Twitter. Listen, I think but actually it's an interesting example, because I think with the rise of Pod Save America, and like I saw today that the Lincoln Project is just signed with like a talent agency, and is maybe going to do the kind of like right centrist version of Pod Save America potentially. Like, those are media organizations, but they are partisan media organizations. We are journalistic, right? That's our game here. We're here to give you facts. We're here to give you measured facts.
But Americans don't want facts unless they agree with what they.
But yeah, and I think that there's an interesting confusion on the left, because a lot of, particularly like, let's say, listeners to the 538 Politics podcast and Pod Save America might well tend to skew college educated and white, and therefore they're probably skewed Democratic liberal, right? And they want some
reassurance,
they want reassurance, and because they listen maybe to these two politics podcasts, they maybe sometimes mush the two together. And my game is like, that's great. You should listen to that. That's totally fine. That's not my job. My job is not to make you,
Good
rah. But
that's why I'm not trying to get you to predict anything here.
But it is an interesting, extremely 2020 conundrum. And I think, there's a whole probably interesting reflective podcast to be done with like Nate or whomever about the actual effects that 538 has on people's political psyches.
Well, they get pissed because you don't give them that's sort of what we expect from our news now. We expect it to reinforce what we want it to reinforce. And that's why I like 538, because I know you don't. So I appreciate that. We got a whole bunch of good questions.
Okay.
I usually only do 3, but I want to try to get to a few more. Kathy from Austin asks, is Joe Biden making Hillary's mistake by not campaigning in the right places? He's not doing Wisconsin and Michigan anymore, is he? He's down in Georgia and Florida and Iowa, correct?
Yeah, I think Biden, it's a different election because of COVID, so he's certainly just been around less.
Right.
But frankly, he's doing better in those states, and I know that kind of triggers a lot of people's 2016 acid reflux when we talk about Wisconsin and why isn't he campaigning there enough or something. But I do think that
that's not why Hillary lost, so I'm not going to get triggered.
Yeah, I think they feel better about their standing in the state, and I would guess that they have some internal numbers that probably show pretty rosy. This is me totally speaking off the cuff, but showing some things that are maybe rosier internal favorabilities for Biden versus Clinton, and that probably has lots of stuff to do with the fact that he's a sort of predictable older white male moderate politician.
Right.
And Clinton was the first woman.
Isla from San Francisco asks, does voter registration have an effect on the vote? As I hear GOP have larger registrations than Dems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw this question coming up kind of a week ago when this was being reported out. What I would say to that is there's lots of interest from both parties here, but some of those GOP registration numbers could be a little bit misleading because the Democrats saw a lot of registrations in 2018. And also remember, they had a contested Democratic primary. So there would have been people registering to vote for that.
Right.
So there might be just some Republicans who are kind of coming off the bench and saying, I got to register to vote. So it's interesting. And it certainly indicates the enthusiasm that everyone has for this election. But I wouldn't read too much into it.
Hey, I'm Clay Aiken. To hear the full episode, subscribe to This Politicon podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to pods. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show. Go to Politicon.com, follow @Politicon on social media, and listen to a new pod episode of How the Heck every Thursday.